Today we have a wonderful, wonderful panel. I'm not going to name them, but they're going to introduce themselves. And Allison Miller was going to join, but she had family emergencies and so is not here today. But she does have a colleague from Optimum here, and so Optimum does cybersecurity and those kinds of things, and so we are happy and pleased to have a full panel. So here's what you know. You know that technology, cybersecurity, and policy is changing at an exponential rate. Things are happening, and we're trying to keep up. And then a fundamental question for you is diversity and inclusion, why? Should we? Problem solving, etc. So please welcome our panelists. And oh, by the way, that's Ben Shapiro. And Ben is the moderator for the panel, and he's going to tell us things like why he skipped out of class early. Thank you, Ben. So please welcome
Thanks, Jim.
our speakers, panelists, etc.
Thank you all for your forbearance with my tardiness. Class is officially still going on, but Anyway, I'm a professor in computer science as well as in the School of Education and Social Policy here. It's my pleasure to have this wonderful panel here today. What we thought we would do is ask each person to introduce themselves as they answer a first question, okay? So let's start with Kris. How did you get into cyber? What's led you to roam between private sector and government?
Great. I'll start off with the first question. I fell into cyber. I started 25 years ago. I was in the DC area, and I applied for a job at Boeing. And they said, you are qualified for 3 positions. And I knew one of the positions sounded very boring. It's called External Interface Expert. Didn't know how I would run that into my happy hour conversations. And then one of the ones was security analyst. And so I talked to a mentor, and he said, you want to do security? Security is going to be big. I was like, great, I know I want big. So that's how I started off. I spent around probably 15 to 20 years supporting the Department of Defense and NSA, and then decided when I moved out to Denver 5 years ago that I wanted to switch to industry. It was a lot faster paced, and I had the opportunity to be a consultant to the C-suite. So that's what made my switch. I do still support the government. I write some standards for NIST, as well as consult with a whole variety of clients.
Awesome, thank you. Mary. Yeah, so how did you get into the field? And we're wondering if you have a message for others who are considering careers in this space.
So I got into this field probably 10 years ago. I was a network engineer for a government agency back in DC. It was great. I did 8 years of government work. And then I flipped over recently to working in the casino industry in Las Vegas, where I do real cybersecurity, not just network engineering stuff. Now, I get to deal with a lot of vendors. I get to learn about new technologies. I get to help increase our security posture at the casino. So when you come, your stuff isn't stolen. You get to still play the slots and the tables and all that good stuff. I've done a lot of different things in the industry. So network engineering, insider threat analyst, pen testing, network traffic analyst for US CERT. For someone getting in, there's a lot of different areas you can go to, government versus private sector. I like the private sector a little bit more. It's a lot more flexibility, a lot more money. We like money. That's the reason I moved to Las Vegas. But the government also does some really cool stuff, and you can learn a lot of really cool things in the government. So if it's something you're interested in, just start looking and pursuing those avenues. Network with people. That's the best way of getting your foot in the door and finding those entry-level or mid-career level positions.
Cool. Nancy, I'll give you my mic in just a sec, just so we can say it back and forth. So you're an academic, and I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on how diversity and inclusion has improved during the time of your career, and how might it still improve?
Yes, so I am an assistant professor in the applied math department.
Yes, applied math.
I do not do security, so I'm here to provide sort of the academic perspective. In the spirit of being inclusive. So I think the generation or generations before me, women and underrepresented minorities, did a lot of work to make things better for my generation, establishing a lot of programs such as EDGE, which is funded by the NSF, Advance, and many, many other programs that have increased the number of women in STEM, right? Certainly in mathematics, at the undergraduate level, we now have about 50% of women pursuing. But there's still a lot to be improved, right? At the faculty level, that's certainly not the case. So I think that there certainly has been a lot of improvement, but we still have a lot more work to do. I think with regards to other underrepresented minorities, things have not improved as well. There are less programs, and it could be that at the K through 12 level, the disparities there are a lot greater, right? So I think it's a bigger problem to deal with. So I think the fact that we have this panel is both a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's good because we're discussing it. It's on our minds. It's important. It's a bad thing because we still need it, right? And notice that we're all women. So how can we improve? Well, we need to have more male, especially white male allies pushing for this, right? If it falls just on women and underrepresented minorities or other people with disabilities, right, things are not going to progress as well. So I think that's where we can really make a huge effort.
Thank you. Colleen, yeah, so we're curious about your experiences building a diverse team and experiencing different team company structures that have supported that over the course of your career.
Yeah. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody hear me? Okay. So a little bit about my background to help you understand why it was essentially it was quite easy for me, and being in managerial roles and growing up in the IT and security world, I was 13 years old when we moved from the East Coast to Hawaii. And if you've ever been to Hawaii, you will understand that it is a very diverse culture. There's, it's like a cultural melting pot. And so growing up in that environment, it opened up my eyes to be able to not see color, to not see differences. We're all people, and we come with various different talents, different expectations, different ideas, different ways of solving problems. And so as I started, in my jobs and in management and building teams, and it was interesting because I was at MCI here in Colorado in the early 90s, and they had said, well, they started taking a focus on diversity. And so I brought this back to my team, and I took a look around the room, much like I'm looking at this room today, and said, we're already quite diverse. We had folks from Iraq. We had folks from various parts of the Middle East, Pakistan, India. We had one person on our team who was from Russia. And then we had various folks, from all over from the United States. And even if you look at the United States, it too is a cultural melting pot. We have different cultures and different diversities and different things when you look just across our entire country. So building a diverse team, we had already started that when it became an ideal. And we were on the forefront. And I love looking around this room right now and seeing a lot of diversity, and it's so exciting.
Cool. Thank you. So I realized I was a little negligent. I didn't actually ask you to say your full name and where you work and all these things. And Nancy caught me, and she got it. But could the other three of you just do that, please?
Yes, I'm Colleen Katz. I am with, I think the doctor said Optum Technology. It is the IT arm of the United Health Group, and I am a senior information security officer. I currently support our customer out of the state of Vermont for their health exchange.
So my name is Mary Galloway. I wear two hats. I'm currently a senior architect for a Las Vegas casino. Can't say which one. I can talk to you about it after. And then I'm also the CEO of the Women's Society of Cyberjitsu, a 501c3 cybersecurity community for women. We provide hands-on training, networking opportunities, professional development opportunities, girls program for the girls to get them involved in STEM and cybersecurity as well.
Kris Winkler. I work for BCG Platinum, which is part of the Boston Consulting Group. It's the technology arm, so there's a lot of subject matter experts that work for BCG Platinum, but you don't hear that name, so I always emphasize that that's where it's from. I'm also a board member of Global Minded, which is a nonprofit located in Denver, and it promotes diversity and inclusion for all.
I already introduced myself. You want me to do it again? Nancy Rodriguez. I'm an assistant professor in applied mathematics here at CU Boulder.
Awesome. So we were hoping you could each say a little bit about, and we've heard this about a little bit, but tell us about your team. Each of you, none of you is an island, right? You work together with other people, be it students, fellow faculty, or engineers, policymakers. Who do you surround yourself with?
So the applied math department, well, we have about 20 so faculty, and I think we've been hiring more women recently, so trying to make an effort in that direction. This year, our grad students, we had more women than men, so we were very excited about that. So I've worked, my grad students and undergrads, for some reason I end up working with a lot of women, and it could be because of the topics that I study, maybe interest, females. So that's basically the people that I work here in Boulder. But internationally, my collaborators I've collaborated in France, in Brazil, in Canada, and so in that sense, I work with a very diverse set of group of people.
Great. I love my team. It's super diverse. We have 30% women. And of those, even out of the men and women, we probably have around 50% ethnically diverse group. And then being in consulting, you get a different team every time you're leading something. So we also have age diversity, for people several years out of college to people that are more at the retirement age, so that's really good. We get a lot of different thoughts and opinions, and then I have clients in the U.S. and Germany, England, and India right now. So always someone new to talk to.
So the team that I'm on now, our cybersecurity team is a global team. So we have Las Vegas, Singapore, and Macau. So obviously we have a lot of Asian counterparts, but the team in Las Vegas it's actually probably the most diverse team I've ever been on. I think like half of the people that work there are women, and then we've got black women, white women, Asian women, Hispanics, all ranges. And then the age thing, we've got fresh out of college students. You got to be 21 to work in the casino, so you can't work there if you're younger, right? All the way up to folks that have been there for 15, 20 years. Lots of knowledge is shared there. They're really supportive of doing community service work and getting out, and that's probably one of the reasons that I like working there, is because of the diverse environment.
Well, United Health Group is a global company. They are extremely diverse. We have businesses that we are starting and working in South America in various countries such as Chile and Peru, Brazil. We're also scattered across Europe, particularly like in the UK and Ireland. We have very large support structures out in India. Let's see, all across the United States. So we have, as has already been explained, we have all different types of ethnicities. We have folks from all over the world, many, many women. It is increasing. We have multiple different types of programs that we have offer at United Health Group. We have one which is our TDP program, or talent development, where we bring in interns and they get to not really shadow us around. We actually put them to work, so they get to gain some real life experience right there on the job. We get a lot that come from various different colleges across the country with different backgrounds. In addition, we, Allison, as you had mentioned, unfortunately, since she could not be here, she is a board member of the Women in Cybersecurity. I'm also a member, so we're trying to get that message out the door. And then we just started, and I just literally got off the ballpark, basically, and it's called the Optum Security Advocacy Program. And basically, I signed up. I'm an advocate. Basically, I get to mentor someone and help them with their career. And again, all different ethnicities, very diverse. And that's one of the amazing things about working for this company is, again, each time you go to a different project, you have new faces, new people, new ideas, new ways of solving problems, and it makes it so much interesting than going through a routine day.
Cool. Well, one thing that amazes me and impresses me about all of you is you've managed to be part of building teams that, let's be real, are much more inclusive than the tech industry overall. Yeah. And I'm curious, what are the steps you've taken or your organizations have taken to try to get there?
Well, may I, is that,
sure,
since I've got the mic, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So going back to, when I was a manager, and when you talk about inclusivity, it was interesting because even though we had diversity, I mean, on paper, essentially, I was noticing that there were little pockets, of folks. Those that were from the Middle East would go off to themselves. Those that were from Europe would go off, and be by themselves. And I said, well, what's wrong with this picture? And I said, something's wrong. We're not communicating. We're not sharing. And so getting the team together and going out and doing things. Or I would invite them over to my home and say, okay, somebody bring a dish that's one of your favorite dishes, something along that line. And it would then invoke discussion and storytelling. And then everybody came together. And when that happened, that's when the ideas and helping solve problems and the innovation really, really took off at that point. And I see that in our company today, a lot of teamwork, a lot of outside activities. There's a lot of cordial joking around in the office, but we take the time to get to know each other, so it's not just all business. Put some personal flavor on things.
It reminded me, I just got back last night, and my team, I have 3 people this week, and one of the persons is from Jamaica, another one was from China, and the other one was from India. So truly, again, a diverse team, but how we build that is we just try to put the best people on the ground. My company, fortunately, is very equitable, and so we pay for the role that the person is in. And so there's no, disparate salaries. You can sort of negotiate, but not really. And so, you get paid on performance, and it's a huge feedback culture. So if someone thinks that you're not being fair to them, you hear about it, and that doesn't look good in your review. It's not acceptable, and so we put that out there. BCG itself has published a lot of articles about having diverse teams, and so that's very much what we aspire to do. And then now it's just growing by word of mouth. They just look for the best person, and so wherever that person resides is who we end up hiring. Sorry. And we also do a people survey each year, which has diversity, and are we meeting our diversity goals? And so I think that that's important for organizations as well to look at those facts and figures.
So I'll speak to first what, let's say, our department, the university, thinks what they're doing to increase diversity, at least in the realm of mathematics. I think, you always want to target the best person, but in order to increase diversity, you also, it's not an equal playing level field, right? And so you have to target specific people as well. And so we have sort of diversity hires to try to increase at least the faculty level. And also you want to, there are programs like the Colorado Advantage that bring out underrepresented minorities and provide opportunities for them, and also to help them be successful once they're here, right? So I think inclusion, it's not about treating everybody equal, right? It's everybody needs different resources. And so I think it's very important to really distinguish between equity and equality. And so in order to provide an inclusive environment, you have to be aware of that, right? Some people might need more resources than others, and that's okay, right? So we should be mindful about sort of providing those things. Our department, again, still doesn't have a lot of underrepresented minorities. What I'm trying to do personally is I'm trying to recruit graduate students from places like Peru. So I have conversations with faculty there who have good students who would benefit from coming here. And so we're trying to initiate this exchange program. And I think once you reach a critical threshold, it's a lot easier to recruit. There's certainly a lot of talent out there, but it's difficult to actually get them to come to CU Boulder if they don't see any diversity, right? So I think you really need to be mindful and really focus additional efforts to try to reach that critical threshold.
I don't hire people.
Are there things you've done that you feel have been ways to make a more inclusive environment, even if you're not in a hiring role?
So I do interviews with folks, but my role specifically isn't to build a team. So in the nonprofit world, our whole team is women. It's minority women all over the place. For those roles, I like to have women that take initiative, that are willing to go that extra arm or length to make sure that we get our stuff done. Yeah. We're all volunteers, so it's really hard to get volunteers to stay engaged for long periods of time when life happens. And so we try to make sure that we provide the resources that they need to stay engaged and to, continue the mission.
Mm-hmm. Often when we talk about diversity and inclusion, we're talking about identities. We're talking about ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation. But cybersecurity, one of the things that makes it interesting is to be successful, you also need people with a diversity of backgrounds, whether it be they're trained as engineers, they're policymakers, there's a bunch of other roles. We're wondering if you could say a little bit about the kinds of folks you work with, the different backgrounds they come from, and how you've learned to work with people who have different backgrounds than you do. Anyone wants? Great, go for it.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
To me, it doesn't really matter what your background is. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be working on a project together, we're going to work together regardless. And so I like to have people that may not have a traditional IT background on my team because they can see things differently. I'm always looking at stuff in the technical realm, right? But they can see it from the end user, or they can see it from the customer service side. And so having those different backgrounds, even with liberal arts, that's like, they can see the artistic side of it. And so it's like, how do we analyze this in a way that is useful and can get us to that finish line? So that's what I like to do.
I just blanked out. Oh my goodness. Again, yeah, I think it's more of, Garrett and I, we were talking earlier, and what I was getting around to is it's in our career field is really dynamic in the sense that there's so many different facets of security, of information security that you can wind up in. You can wind up in policy and governance. You could do risk management, incident response. There's a whole slew of different components that you run through when you are in an operation role or in some type of a security role. And with that, because of our role and the expectation that we have a depth and breadth of knowledge, not only just in different types of business aspects, but understanding of the data that we're trying to protect, have an understanding of the operating systems, the network, and all of those other different components, that it does put us in touch with having to work with many, many, many different types of people. And what I was, discussing with him was, it's one key piece is that communication factor. And I think that that's really key critical, is to be able to communicate with those others, be able to learn to speak their language, get the message across so that you come to an agreement and a good understanding of that project or what your goals and your objectives are so they can be met. Often we have to work with executives, and they speak a whole different language. There's no doubt about it. They're talking at a very different level than if you're talking to the network tech guy. So with our role, that puts us in that position of having to be able to cover the entire gamut of how we communicate and work with others. And from my own personal experiences, I try to do that every day. I can't tell you that I'm always successful. There are challenges. We have, and it's just human nature to have miscommunications. But what takes is the tenacity to follow through, break down the communication barrier, and get to a common understanding.
We hire people from all different types of backgrounds, degrees. I think the one distinguishing factor, usually they have some sort of advanced degree, whether it's a master's or an MBA. And it's mainly, I'd like to second that, it's really about communicating and having the ability to adapt to certain situations, to use the best team, and to be able to communicate with people at all levels. And so when we're looking for people, we want people to be able to communicate and speak different languages. So we have, a pretty cool gentleman working for us right now that has like 15 years from the CIA. So he's got an interesting cyber background, and we use him for instance, for tabletop simulations. But we've certainly hired people from policy backgrounds or to test products or all sorts of things, and then we look at who we want to put on the ground for a particular client. And so we look at those skills at that point, but it's open. So even if you don't have the background now, but you have the interest, it just takes an initiative and communication.
Ben, can you remind me about the question?
Yeah, so it's about insights you've had about working with people with different backgrounds than you.
I don't want to be a politician who just answers the question, answers the same thing no matter what the question is.
That's the politician move.
So I guess just the one thing that I want to add is I think for me it's still a learning experience. Clearly I work with people who don't have the same background. And it's, for the most part, never an issue, right? You're focused on work. But I think I've been thinking more recently about sort of the role that language plays. And I think it's something that we've been, as a society, been thinking more and more about, right? How to be more inclusive. So recently we submitted a proposal to have a Women in Complex Systems workshop. And it was pointed out by one of the persons that was co-organizing that, actually, no, it was someone who we invited. It was a senior female physicist, and she's like, this sounds great. I would love to participate on the condition that you change, sort of are inclusive in how you define women, right? So including non-binary women, trans. And so just thinking about the language so that people, who, might not feel necessarily welcome by just the use of, if we're saying women in complex math, and you're not specific about the language, it could sort of isolate some people who should be participating in these workshops. And so I think for me, it's still something that I keep working on every day, right? I am very conscientious about the fact that there are very few women and Latinos in STEM. but maybe I haven't been so conscientious about being inclusive for people who have learning disabilities, right? And so that's something that I think that it's sort of a learning process.
Yeah. So that's a great kind of way to frame things. I think we could follow up on that by asking for each of you, like, what does inclusion and diversity mean to you? Because it can be really broad, as you pointed out. Anybody else want to share some thoughts on that?
Sure. Inclusive environment is, having everyone have the foot at or seat at the table, and so I'll just go about one of the ways we do that is we expect everyone to talk when they're in a room, and so even if there's someone that we're meeting with in the C-suite, the very most junior person to the very most senior person has to say at least two things, whether it's a question or something else, and so that's how we include everyone despite backgrounds, and so that's just having that opening in there makes it a more inclusive environment. And then just diversity is diversity in the room, diversity in the backgrounds, and just being cognizant and aware of that.
So I just asked this question to our cybersecurity group on Facebook. I said, what does diversity and inclusion mean to you? And the answers I got was kind of interesting. One of them was, let women in. And it made me think, like, is that really what we mean by diversity and inclusion? And it's not just women, yes, but it's not just about women. It's about folks with disabilities. It's about minorities. It's about those groups that are not represented regularly. When I walk into a room, if I see a room full of white males, I'm going to be like, probably shouldn't be here. Yeah. But if I walk into a room that's full of like this, okay, maybe this crowd's going to be a little bit more welcoming, a little bit more engaging. With our volunteers, we try to make sure we include them in every conversation that has to deal with the volunteers, because we want them to be able to help make decisions that drive what they're doing, right? We don't want them to feel like we're just throwing, go do this, go do this, go through this. We want you to say, hey, let's do it this way. Here's an idea. And include them in that conversation.
Can I ask you two quick follow-up questions?
Yes.
One, how do people join the Facebook group if they're interested?
It's actually Women in Cybersecurity /Cyberjitsu.
Okay.
And Jitsu is JUTSU. You can also go on the website, womenscyberjitsu.org, and find our information there too.
Okay. Question number two.
Okay.
You mentioned this experience of walking into a room and thinking like, oh, do I belong here? And this question is really for all of you, but I'll start with you. Are there things people have done in those moments to help you to feel welcome in a space where you might not have, that folks in this room should learn as strategies to help to build more inclusive environments?
It's an interesting question. My very first job in IT was with a company called Accenture. I was the only female, and I was the only black female on the team, and I hated it. Like, I almost literally left the industry because they wanted me to be the secretary. And I wanted to be the one running the cables, putting the switches and routers in, getting hands-on. Like, I like to build stuff. And so it was really difficult that first year. I dove into learning, getting my certifications and trying to figure out, okay, what's my next move? At that point in time, I didn't really think about it as an issue, but as I grew, I was like, that's an issue. So for you guys, if you guys are in a space where you see someone that feels uncomfortable or looks like they don't know if they belong, just go talk to them. It takes 2 seconds to say, hey, how are you? What's your name? What are you interested in? And it helps them feel like they probably should be in that space.
Other people want to answer that?
Yeah, I second that. I've been on both sides of that coin. In Hawaii, I would walk into a room and it would be all Asians, and I always kind of, sometimes I would feel like an outsider, but we would open up conversation. Either I would introduce myself or they would introduce, themselves. We'd find, through conversation, a commonality, something that we both believed in, and then that seemed to cut the ice. And as I don't know if you've noticed, but we've all been quite talkative. Well, the hour before we came in here, and it was easy for us just to walk up to each other, introduce ourselves, and just started talking. I think they know more about my children now, where I grew up, and which is wonderful, because that's really what it comes down to is with that inclusivity is sharing. And not being afraid to share. Share, your religious, differences, or agree to disagree, or whether it be gender differences. It's we're all the same people essentially, and celebrate the differences, because that's where our uniqueness really comes from. And be open. Just try to open that door one time, and you'll be amazed.
So I grew up, my dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. So it was a lot easier. Well, it was difficult as a child, not moving, but meeting people, because I was super shy. But I learned to not look at anyone differently. And so I just made friends with whoever would make friends with me. And so that's kind of helped, especially for the first 15 years when I would walk in a room and it would be only men. But it's, I'd say to, just kind of look at everyone, be respectful, but look at everyone in a sense as equals. And one of the things that I do is, no matter if I'm in a training course or wherever I am, I always sit in a different spot. I never sit next to my friends or colleagues, if I can help it, my day-to-day colleagues, so that I'm always meeting someone new. And so I would recommend doing that, just walking into a room and introducing yourself, and just be open and meet people, and that makes them feel included no matter what.
And I guess it's just, be a nice person, right? If you see someone who is feeling, you can tell that they're not comfortable, go and talk to them, right? So I think that for me, doing that, I think that being with people who think differently than you is very useful, because they question what you believe. And so I don't think we appreciate that enough, right? I think we're always talking about our differences as a negative thing, when in reality, I think it can be very, very positive. I was very lucky that even though I am in an environment where very few people look like me, I really am here because many white males included me, right? And they say, hey, Nancy, you should do research. Hey, Nancy, you should go to grad school. And so they really encouraged me and made me feel like I really belonged in mathematics, right? When I, first started university, I, didn't really think that, because no one really looked like me. Even when I went to grad school, one of the first things that I did was to look up last names of all the grad students for a Hispanic last name, so that, and I contacted that person and we became friends. But then later I realized, I can't, I have to become part of the group, right? You just can't look for people that look like you, right? You're not going to grow that way. So be open to meeting people who look different, who think different. I think that'll help you grow.
I just saw a really nice example of something like this last week. One of my grad students went to a conference she'd never been to before. And the conference did this really smart thing where they said, if you've never been here before, we're not only going to pay for your airfare to just come and see if you want to be part of our community, but everybody was new. They assigned them a buddy who was an experienced person at the conference. And so the idea was they got together the night before, so one person you've at least had a conversation with, you can look for in the room. And then it also was the buddy's job to help you to meet other people. And I thought that was just such a brilliant way to structure growing who participates in a conference. So if any of you are organizing conferences in the future, do the buddy thing. We're going to have some Q&A from the audience in just a couple minutes. So if you're not already, spinning on what question do you want to ask, start doing that. I'm just going to ask one or two more questions, and then it'll be time for you all. One thing that seems pretty obvious to me, both based on your personalities, but also based on the nature of cybersecurity or academic research as a field, is none of you were like, okay, I went to school, I learned my stuff, now I can just go like punch the clock, I don't need to learn anything new. You're all lifelong learners. So what are you learning right now? Why are you learning it? What's hard about it? What's exciting you about it? You want to start?
With regards to diversity and inclusion, I'm learning a lot of things. I mean, I love being a student, which is why I'm an academic, right? I never wanted to go into the real world. No, it's true. You're constantly learning. With regards, I mean, I already touched on some points of things that I'm learning and trying to focus on with regards to inclusivity and diversity. It's just broadening my concerns and use of language to be, I think it'll be useful for when I'm in the classroom and also just for my research group.
That was a very good point for lifelong learning, because I think if you're not a lifelong learner, this is not the career for you. You have to keep up to date with pretty much, I'd say everything, because you don't want to be in a situation where you're meeting with someone and you have no idea what they're talking about. So that's the discovery and curiosity gene is very high in people that are in cybersecurity. The thing that I'm learning about now is not really having anything to do with cybersecurity. It's more some different leadership skills, and as being in consulting, it's not just about consulting on things that you're comfortable with. Sometimes it's consulting on things that you have no clue with, but looking like you're the expert anyway. So you have enough of a background, and it's just being asking the right questions to have the team be able to execute, even though you may not have the expertise in that area. So it's just coming up with good questions is my goal right now.
Good ones. So inside of technology, right now I'm working on learning how to build cyber ranges. I don't know if you all know this, but our nonprofit just hosted the Wicked Six Cyber Games this past summer in Vegas, and of course your school won. So congratulations. Hopefully we'll have more teams come next year. But bridging the gap between cybersecurity and learning and gaming is a really big thing right now, and so we're trying to work on figuring out how to build those things ourselves. Plus, it's a learning experience when you're building that stuff. You have to learn like reverse engineering and incident response and things that you don't normally do day to day. Outside of this, I've been actively learning how to better budget my money so that I can pay my student loans off. So,
it's really hard.
It's a really hard thing, especially living in Vegas, and we like wine and we like to go out and we like to do stuff. So it's like, how do you find that balance? So watch a lot of YouTube videos on it. Kind of cool stuff.
Again, yes, it's definitely a career field where you never stop learning something. I'm actually kind of dabbling in quite a few things right about now. I don't know how many of you have ever, seen those, cute little titles off like the CISO magazines or, IT security, where it says, how do you get your CISO to agree to your project and to pay for it? Kind of in one of those conundrums. We have a whole new environment that is there to, and it's an infrastructure to support our state customers for the Affordable Care Act. And so we have a program, a security program on that, where we are evaluating all of the different regulatory security requirements, and there is a plethora of them. They contradict each other. There are gaps. There is, some are more stringent than others. So what we have been working on is how do we take all of that information and try to standardize it? across all of United Health Group, so that way we don't have all of these various different silos, essentially, where we have an infrastructure that just supports one type of a system and another infrastructure that supports a state infrastructure, because it becomes extremely costly. So we have been in touch with our CISO, and we do have his support, and so that's one big effort. Another effort is with a smaller team. And we have been pushing automation. And for many of you who are out there know that security tools from a management and tracking and monitoring perspective are very far and few between. And so we do a lot of things in a manual spreadsheet, perspective. So we have a team, and we're trying to look at how we can automate vulnerability management down to the tracking of it, not just from vulnerability scans, but security baseline scans, penetration test results, database scans, things like that. Centralize it all and be able to provide KPIs, ability to report that out to the state customers. It is their environment, so they would need that information, but also to provide those executive level reports, internally. So that's where we're at, and it's a challenge because we don't necessarily always have the tools. So we have to be much more modern, innovative, brainstorming of how we're going to make that happen.
So my last question is sort of based on the fact that all of you are pretty experienced now. You may not feel that way as an assistant professor, but you are. And we have a bunch of students in the room. So imagine you had a time machine or a time turner if you're a Harry Potter fan, and you could go back and give yourself advice, let's say 10 years ago. What's something you wish you could tell your younger self, knowing how you've grown in your career?
Don't do it. No. No, I don't have any regrets. I think that what I would tell myself, learn, I guess, maybe volunteer a lot more. Get yourself involved and engaged, not just with your studies with school, but get involved with the different types of cybersecurity forums like ISC2. You don't necessarily always have to have a certification in order to join those local chapters. What that does is it helps you get inclusive. It helps you with networking for potential positions. It helps you find other job opportunities. It helps you get info if you're interested in a different aspect of cybersecurity. Say you're in incident response and you want to get into forensics, for example. Those types of clubs or organizations, Women in Cybersecurity, ISC2, ISACA, there's also now the EC Council, things like that. That's what I would definitely recommend, because that stretches you further. It gets you involved with your community as well, and it helps you to network and meet other people in the career field for sharing and gaining additional knowledge.
That's a hard question.
You're welcome.
One piece of advice. There you go. Get thick skin. Actually, that's a really good piece of advice. You're going to get knocked down. People are going to tell you you're not good enough. They're going to tell you you're not supposed to be here. You can't do this. Why are you here? Get thick skin. I've heard it all. Like, oh, you're not smart enough to do that. So as a college student, you should be able to have that thick skin anyway. We've all been to college, I think, so in a different time, I'm sure. But I think something else is just take the initiative. If you want to do something, just do it, right? Don't be afraid to do it. Don't psych yourself out, because sometimes we psych ourselves out because we think we can't. Just do it. If you fail, oh well, try again.
There's so much to say. I would say volunteer for everything, or don't turn down something just because you don't want to do it. Also network more, and just come to the table or a party or what have you with honest curiosity about the other person, because that will help your network in the future. And you may not realize that now, but building a network is probably one of the most important things that you can do. People probably tell you that all the time in your classes, but it really is true. So just build relationships and look at it like you're building a relationship, not that you want to get to know someone for something that they can do for you, but be honestly curious in who they are, and that will help your careers tremendously.
I would say ask why not instead of why. Whenever an opportunity presents itself, I think most of us think like, well, why should I do it? No, why not? Just do it. Don't be afraid. Even if you're uncomfortable, especially if you're uncomfortable, you should do it because it's going to help you grow. And the other thing is, don't take failure too seriously, right? Like, you're not going to get a job, not every job. Your grants are not all going to get funded, and your papers might be rejected. And I think what makes a difference is how we handle that failure, right? Like, go, be sad for a day or two, but then get back to it, right? So I think that really is key in being successful, right? And that helps build thick skin.
Yesterday I was looking on Twitter and I saw a woman posted a picture from her PhD defense, and she had made a skirt out of all the rejection letters she'd ever gotten, and she wore it to this like very consequential event in her life, and I was like, what a cool person. I want to be friends with her. All right, on that note, questions? Yeah.
So the cybersecurity field has a number of things that I think inherently make it less accessible to diverse groups of people or people who are at risk. So for example, cybersecurity inherits its underlying language from computer science, IT, and then military terminology to protect those. And I feel like I'd really appreciate to hear what communication shifts or adjustments or strategies you use to help the culture of cybersecurity be more accessible to the kinds of people like you that you want to work with.
Well, so we, at the nonprofit, we do training. So we try to make sure that we do training that is that foundation. So networking, so that they get that language and understand that language. We also try to go into schools where those underrepresented students are. It's one thing to go to like a Stanford or a Harvard and say, hey, let's come over, do whatever. But if you don't go to the schools where those groups are at, it's going to be really difficult to get them engaged to start learning those underlying concepts for cybersecurity. So we always try to tell folks, hey, do a help desk role first, because that way you're learning about basic infrastructure stuff, and you're starting to get that jargon and understand, okay, this is what packets look like, this is what this looks like, and understand how those things move through the network. And then you can start to jump over to the cybersecurity side. You can come into cybersecurity entry level, no doubt, but if you don't have that foundation, it's not going to happen. So we just try to make sure we touch on that.
Having worked in both DoD and in the private sector, I understand exactly what you're talking about. When you're in the DoD, they have a whole different language, and definitely. One of the things I think that's important, when I talked about communication and our ability to be able to transform our communication, is also we have this thing at work now, and what I was talking about thick skin real quick is cybersecurity. We're notoriously known as the no people. No, you can't do that. Here's why. And so what we've done is we've transformed no and O into KNOW. as a no, because a part of our job is we are always mentors in the sense, and coaches. So that's part of our job, is we have to do that translation. And so we do a lot of reading, we do a lot of research, we try to keep up to date on all of the newest things, try to stay on that bleeding edge. But when we're communicating with everyone else, that's where it comes in. We become the translators. We become the ones that are the teachers. We're helping them to understand our terms, our requirements, our needs, and put that in terms that they can understand. Does that make sense? Okay.
So I always make myself available as a mentor, and it's even kind of funny. I get calls from friends all the time that, you know, they met someone that's interested in cybersecurity. They don't have a background on the East Coast, and they're like, "Can you talk to them?" I was like, "Okay." So that they're not sure if they want to do that, but they may be in high school, and so I give them a call, and I try to inspire some sort of curiosity within them so that they will pursue that path and tell their friends. But I think that's, again, it has to do with networking and saying, you'll talk to anyone that wants to. My degree, my undergraduate degree is in business, so I did not start off in computer science. I just learned it along the way. I did have the benefit, my dad had his PhD in computer science, so I grew up with computers. I just didn't want to do what he did. But I think it's just opening up the door to those conversations, and no matter where you are, in your neighborhood, outside of your neighborhood, at the grocery store, what have you, and starting that conversation with someone.
I don't think I have any.
Okay.
Anybody on this side of the room got a question?
So you all seem like very strong and inspiring women, very confident with what you're doing. I'm wondering, you've all kind of mentioned that cybersecurity and technology has so many different facets, and there's so many different paths in front of you, and all different paths to be successful. So when there's all these opportunities and you're excited and you're confident, how do you choose between them? How do you choose just one path and confidently follow it?
Yeah. So I don't think a lot of people know what they want to do. I could be speaking, but I think you figure it out along the way. So you pick something, right? And then after you pick that thing and you decide whether you like it or not, then you pick something else, or you volunteer, or someone volunteers you to do something else, and you just learn that way, because a lot of people don't really realize their paths until they've had a lot of experience. And so it looks like it's easy, and it's not. It's a struggle, and you look back and you're like, okay, well, great, all the pieces just seem to come together, but it sure did take a long time. So some people will have an easy path, some people don't, but I've always loved all of my experiences, and I've done technical work, non-technical work, and it's all kind of come to a head, and now it's great.
So I mentioned this before. I like to build stuff. So, really, I built the Millennium Falcon, the 7,000-piece Lego thing. It's sitting in my living room. Yeah. You're not allowed in my house. And so when I look for roles, I look for those things where I can help build something. So what brought me to Vegas was helping them build a vulnerability management program. So we can have that conversation later. And then I moved into architecture. I'm not doing anything super technical, but I'm still building stuff from a strategy perspective. And so as long as I'm helping build things, that's kind of how I look for those different types of roles and how I go about it.
Sometimes they just land in your lap. Sometimes it's what the boss wants or what the boss needs. Sometimes it's, a scope change in the project. But as those, I look at the opportunities, as they come along. I mean, sometimes you might find yourself in two. And you're like, wow, I'm a little bit overwhelmed, two different, houses. But but you find a way to make it work. And the thing of it is exactly like you said, is that you find what you like, what you don't like about it, whether it's something you want to continue working in. Either way, you chalk it all up as, hey, this is more experience under my belt.
So at the risk of keeping us 5 minutes over, there's one person who's had his hand up both times. I want to make sure we get to him too.
Thanks a lot. So I'm the vice president of the Cyber Club here at CU. The Cyber Club has honestly had pretty bad gender diversity in the past, to the point where it's become a little embarrassing, frankly. I think there are a few issues at play, one of which is that we've had a difficult time getting women to join the leadership. So I want to know, first of all, if you had any perspective on how we can encourage diversity in student organizations, and then more specifically, how we can encourage women and encourage people from diverse backgrounds to actually to become a part of leadership and start taking those kinds of roles in these organizations.
I would say advertising. I don't know how you're advertising your club. That there may be some nifty ways that you might be able to spruce it up, to be more diverse, without just saying, "Hey, we want diversity." I mean, you'll have to get a little bit clever there. Talk to others, network. That's really the key thing. Is definitely with the networking. See if you talk to females. See if they are interested. Talk to them directly, and maybe you may be able to get them to volunteer or at least come to attend the meetings as a start.
I have one idea. So the Cyber Club at CSN in Las Vegas, it's run by the women. So something you can do is, because they always ask for speakers to come in, get women speakers to come in. When you get the women speakers to come in, they'll invite more women and show them that, hey, you can come be a part of this as well. And then I don't know what kind of activities you guys do, but if you do hands-on activities, do a capture the flag event. Women love that. People say that we don't, but we like to do the competition stuff because we're really good at it. I'm just saying. But yeah, you have to change the activities that you do that seem to be more inclusive to women, right? And so getting speakers that are women or diverse candidates, Asian, Black, whatever, also will help that, because they'll invite their friends, and then you'll start to see that change.
I was going to say invite some women friends and then ask them how you can improve upon what you're doing now to get others interested. And then they may tell some of their friends who tell some of their friends. And that's even if they're not into cyber, right? You just get them to show up, buy them a pizza or something. Just get it to where they start talking to their friends and then they know about it.
I would say that you're going to have to work really hard. Again, it's reaching that threshold, right? They don't want to be part of an organization where there are no women, and so it's hard to get that one person. So you're going to have to do, I think, some targeting. So I would try to find a list of all the grad women who would be interested and target them specifically. And also find out from them why, if they choose not to be a part of it, like what is it that's keeping them, right? They're the ones who have really the reason, why they're not coming, right? So it could be that the events you're planning are not interesting to them. It could be just the fact that there aren't other women, right? So I think you sort of need to figure it out. But if I'm targeted, if someone says, hey, we would like you to be part of this organization, I'm more likely to be responsive rather than if you just see a flyer.
Yeah. Well, we're out of time is the problem. But I will say, feel free to stick around after. Our panelists will be here for a bit, and you can come talk to them one-on-one or four-on-one if that's your thing. Just to add a little bit of additional advice on that last question, one thing you could think about doing is co-branded, co-planned events with existing groups like WIC, the Women in Computing group, or T9 Hacks, which is a hackathon that's specifically focused on inclusion here on campus. Those may be ways to partner with existing woman-led technical student organizations, and you could see where that goes as well. In the meantime, thank you very much to our panelists. And thank you all for coming.